Hello again, church. Good morning to you, to everybody at Her Screen Family Church, listening in on our website, and any others who may be visiting us on YouTube or our website. It's good to be with you again. Easter's past. It's all over. Children should be going back to school tomorrow. Holidaymakers back to work. Life back to normal. No, not this year. It's as though time stopped still. The clock's still ticking. The earth is still circling the sun, but it seems as life is on hold whilst we deal with something that we've never faced before. Now, I think it may have felt a bit like this for those early disciples after that first Easter. The shock horror of what had taken place last weekend was now hitting them. The arrest, the mock trial, the false accusations, that brutal public whipping with a whip of leather straps and stones tied into the ends so that it would tear off the skin as they pulled on it. A whipping that very nearly killed him. And then that barbaric crucifixion. We thought he was the Messiah, they would say. We thought he'd come from God to save us. We thought at last the end of Roman rule. The King of the Jews has come. And now he's dead. Time stood still. What are we going to do now? How can we go back to life? The life that we had before all of this happened. He's changed our lives forever. And there can be no going back. Scared for their own lives because the Jewish leaders were already searching for the followers of Jesus. They wanted to mete out the same punishment as they'd done to their so-called Messiah. And so the disciples are hid together behind locked doors. They had absolutely no idea as they cowered in that upper room, whispering and wondering and talking. They had no idea what was about to happen next. With no announcement, no knocking at the door. No, suddenly the man that they last saw lying dead in a tomb was standing there, slap in the middle of the room. John, the apostle, who was there at the time, tells us in his Gospel, chapter 24 and verse 19, just what happened that night. Let me just read a small extract of it to you from the Bible. That Sunday evening, the disciples were meeting behind locked doors because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders. Suddenly, Jesus was standing there among them. Peace be with you, he said. And as he spoke, he showed to them the wounds in his hands and in his side. They were filled with joy when they saw the Lord. Again he said to them, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you. And then he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. They must have been absolutely stunned. In that single moment, their future was established. Not only was their Messiah exactly who they thought he was, now they'd seen him resurrected from the dead. And they received instructions from him as to what they were now going to do. Life had changed permanently. There was no going back. Now that's what happens when you meet Jesus. That's what happens when you meet. Your life's changed forever. You make a new start. Nothing is ever the same again. For those first disciples, this was just the beginning. And over the course of the next 40 days, they would meet with the risen Jesus on many occasions. Thomas, he was missing from that first Sunday. He got a special visit from Jesus a week later and an invitation. Thomas, put your finger into the holes in my hands. Put your hand into the hole in my side. Thomas didn't doubt anymore after that. They once had breakfast together on a beach. They'd been out fishing all night long and they caught absolutely nothing. And a figure appears upon the beach and calls out to them and says, try casting your nets to the other side. The other side of the lake? No, the other side of the boat. Now, tell me, are there more fish on the right side of a boat than a left side of a boat? These were fishermen. And yet there was something about this stranger that was telling them what to do, that they just did it. And they caught so many fish they could hardly bring them in. And then they brought him up on the beach and realised it was Jesus. He'd even got a fire started and some bread. And they had breakfast there on the beach with the risen Jesus. You know, there are at least 12 occasions that we know about just that are recorded in the scriptures of when Jesus appeared to people after his resurrection. And on one occasion it's recorded that he appeared to over 500 people at once. Why didn't Jesus return to heaven straight away? Why did he wait 40 days? Well, I think the answer is here somewhere, in that he knew what a lot of doubting Thomases we all are. Now, our whole Christian faith is built upon like a foundation stone of the resurrection of Jesus from the dead. He's alive today. And without the resurrection, we would have no faith. And mankind needed these eyewitness accounts of the risen Jesus. Else we simply wouldn't believe. You know, even in our modern courts of law today, the account of an eyewitness carries huge weight. Now, in fact, many cases, even today, are still decided solely upon the accounts of eyewitnesses. It is such a valuable testimony to the accuracy of the story if you have someone that is able to tell it because they were there. Those first disciples were completely convinced by what they'd seen and heard from the very lips of the risen Jesus. They have to have been convinced. They went on to spend the rest of their lives preaching the good news about Jesus. Most of them lost their lives, martyred at the hands of their enemies because they were preaching Jesus. They would rather preach Jesus than keep their lives, and many lost their lives as a result. That's how convinced they were. That's how certain they were. Yes, meeting Jesus changes lives forever. This coronavirus pandemic we're going through, that's changing lives forever. For some people, it's a living nightmare. As they're on the front line, either caring for the sick or even being sick themselves. There are others who are struggling to cope financially, worried about their future, about their jobs, their careers, their businesses. For some people, loneliness and depression and even despair is beginning to spread like the virus itself. Whatever circumstances we're in, this is all having a profound effect upon our lives. An effect that may well stay with many of us for the rest of our lives. A recent survey was carried out which showed that only 9% of Britons want life to return to normal after the outbreak is over. 9%. That's 1 in 10 people asked. And only one wants life to return back to normal. Well, what was wrong with normal? Well, I think for many people, this whole period of crisis has opened up so many other things to them. For many who were interviewed in this survey, they said it was the clean air. We can breathe in our streets. For some, the strong community links, people supporting one another and shopping for one another and phoning one another up and even standing on their doorsteps, banging the saucepans and clapping their hands, the community spirit that's come out of it. Some have discovered it's nice spending less money. It's lovely having more family time. And in another poll, a YouGov poll, half of them that were interviewed hope to make changes in their own lives after all this is over. That's quite amazing. What we can't find out through polls and surveys is just what's taking place spiritually in the hearts and lives of people, not only in this nation but around the world. Now, it often takes a crisis in our lives to make us sit up and take notice. What really matters in our lives? What are we so dependent upon? What are the things that we feel we couldn't do without, and yet we have? Well, what's of the greatest value to us? These questions are being asked by many people. For many these days have made them reassess their spiritual lives. Some of you may have seen on TV scenes of people falling to their knees in prayer, not in churches, but out in open public places, crying out to God while still keeping at least 2 meters apart. This is affecting people spiritually. This is affecting people. This is making people stop and think. You know, it's my prayer that each one of you, each one who listens to my blogs will come through this pandemic safely and without serious loss. But more than that, I pray that you will turn it into good for your future life, your future walk on this earth. However long or short that walk may be. I pray that you will open up your hearts and your minds to the wonderful truth that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. That's the life to get. A life that is everlasting, a life that is full of the goodness of the presence of Jesus. You know, just as the crisis that hit those first disciples resulted in them meeting the risen Jesus, an encounter which changed their lives forever. May your life be transformed in this time as you dare even to open up your heart and your mind through prayer, through reading the Bible, maybe through chatting with someone else who's already met the risen Jesus. I pray that you might meet him too. Every blessing upon you and your households. Bye for now.